Cooper here is the big destroyer of things left in the apartment. So we're going to go over a leadership exercise. We've been practicing this a little bit. Basically, the exercise involves me putting a high-value treat, in this case a chicken liver treat, on the floor. Now when I put it down, what I'm going to do, you'll see me, is I'm going to toss one treat. He'll probably go out of camera over there. I'm going to get down like this and be facing him, and I'm going to drop it the last couple inches. It has to be dropped between your feet. So don't drop it in front and then walk up over it. So once I do this, I'm going to use the escalating consequences that we went over off camera. If you go to doggoneproblems.com and search on dog training tips, there's a search box. You can search for escalating consequences. I have videos where I explain what these are. But what I'm going to do is basically I'm going to pivot my hips and keep my hips or authority pointed at him no matter where he goes. As soon as he sits, I'm going to take a step backwards. As soon as he lays down, when he sits is his way of saying, I'm challenging you less. When he lays down, that's his way of saying, I give up or I surrender. As soon as he surrenders the first several times, we're going to immediately let him have the treat, and that's our way of communicating to him that he did something that we wanted him to do. Lucky, come here, buddy. I'm going to pick you up. This isn't ideal for the situation, but I can't have you getting the treat. All right, so
you can
now
put him here too.
Oh, let's do that, okay. And then when I put him on the, thank you. Once I put this on the ground, he's not allowed to come. I put my fingers around like this. Imagine there's a circle on the floor 3 feet away from where the treat is, and he is not allowed to cross into that 3 foot. He can go anywhere else around the room that he wants. He's just not allowed to cross that 3 foot line. All right, you ready to do this, buddy? Come here. So I'm going to toss the first one just to get him to move away. See if he'll find that one. All right, we'll toss the second one over there. There you go, you get twofer. Found one, found two. So now I get down in position. I drop it. Make sure you drop it when the dog's looking. I turn my hips to face him. As soon as he sits down, I take a step back. 2 steps only, left, right. I wait for him to look at me, and then I take a step back. When he looks at me, I take another step back. Now I'm going to wait at about this distance, and I'm off camera, and that's okay. Let's just go ahead and film the dog. Now you can see that he's breathing a little bit heavy, and he's watching me. For dogs, when they're a little bit stressed out, their breathing sometimes will increase. Normally, if there's a treat on the floor, his instinct tells him to go get it. Dogs are very reactive creatures. They don't typically analyze and think about things. So in this situation, his instinct is telling him to go get it, but we've communicated and taught him that we don't want him to get it during this exercise. Now he's not, there we go, he wasn't looking at me, so I just shifted my weight a little bit. Sometimes you can do a small benign movement and that'll get the dog's attention. Now he just yawned and he's licking his lips and licking his tongue. Licking the tongue can be a sign of stress, and the yawning is a way of kind of saying, hey man, I'm either overwhelmed or you need to calm down. Now he's also not looking directly at me, which would be a challenge. This video is full of all sorts of dog behavior stuff. There we go. He looks at me, so I'm going to take another step backwards. And when I step back, I'm off camera, but I want to only take 2 steps, a left foot, right foot, and then I stop with my feet together, still with my hips or my belly button pointed right at the dog. Now, as soon as he LAYs on his own, I'm spelling this out because I don't want the dog to do it on command. So when the dog SITs, we take a step backwards, and when the dog LAYs, we're going to approach the treat, be 3 feet away from it, turn so it's on our right or left side, and then at first I kneel down and tap near it to give the dog permission to come and take it. Some dogs I use a kissing sound, a smooch, while I tap at the same time to communicate that yes, you have permission to get it. And he was very reluctant to come over and get it at first. And you can see his penis is out. For male dogs, an erect penis or a penis coming out, the lipstick like that, can mean the dog is excited without it being a sexual thing. Now, some dogs will do what he was doing earlier, is they go walk around the room and groom themselves, and they're trying to say, I don't even want your stupid treat anymore. That's complete BS. They want the treat. They're hoping that we will lower our guard so they can go and get it. So you see that he's kind of turned off to the side. He's panting. He's been yawning. He's been licking his lips, and he's breathing heavy. There's a lot of communication that's going on that most people wouldn't be aware of. Now again, I'm waiting for him to LAY on his own. If I tell him to LAY, it does not signify anything. If he does it on his own, while he knows that the rule is he's not allowed to get it, then the LAY means that he says, I give up. And the first several times that we do this exercise, as soon as he gives up, we want to give him permission to have the treat. So he understands that the surrender is actually what gets me the reward. Challenging the human or trying to take it on my own doesn't get me anything. But as soon as I surrender I'm rewarded for doing so. Now, this is a little bit longer the video that I would like to go, so I'm going to go through the instructions while we're waiting for him to do it, so we have it in place. What I keep on doing is I keep practicing this exercise, and I like to do it a couple times a day. When I do it, I usually do it 2 or 3 times in a row. Then I wait, and I'll do it 2 or 3 times again later on in the day. Now, when you do any sort of dog training with your dog, you're going to make more progress faster if you can do a practice session, then wait for your dog to nap or sleep before you practice again. Dogs categorize what they learn while they sleep. So if you practice something, let your dog take a nap and then practice it again, he should get better faster by moving that way. The other thing is, now this exercise is a little bit of an exception because eventually he's going to have to wait for up to 15 minutes before he's allowed to get the treat. But when you're doing traditional training, you don't want your dog to, you don't want to do it longer than about 2 to 3 minutes for each training exercise maximum. The longer you do it, sometimes the dog starts getting more failures, they get more frustrated, and then they have a negative perception of that exercise and they're less inclined to want to do it again. So we want to make sure that the dog feels good about it. So one of my apprentices, Tara, always reminds me, make sure that you always end on a good note so the dog remembers a good repetition. Now the instructions for this, once the dog starts LAYing within about 5 to 15 seconds, consistently, a couple times in a row, then I would start adding time. After the dog LAYs, I'm going to wait maybe 10 seconds, then walk over and give the dog permission to get it. Then the next time I'm going to wait 15 seconds, then go 30 seconds, 45, 1 minute. Usually then I go by 1 minute increments all the way to 15 minutes. But for different dogs, we need to change that up. If you go from 10 seconds to 15 seconds and you go from 15 to 30, and that's too big for the dog, you might have to back up and go from 15 to 18. Always take a step backwards and keep on practicing that previous step until your dog has it mastered before we make it more difficult by moving forward. Once we get to the point where the dog can, and again, the dog doesn't have to lay down in one place. It can lay down and move around the room as long as it doesn't try to take the treat. The idea to do this, I usually like to position the treat where I drop it on the floor between the couch or the chair and the television so that I can actually watch TV while we're doing this exercise. And if the dog gets up to try to take the treat, it goes into my line of sight. So I'm able to continue really multitasking, literally. And it helps. The dog's like, man, even when it appears the humans are distracted, they are still paying attention. They are still guarding. They're still enforcing the boundaries. So once we can get up to the point where you're doing it for up to 15 minutes, the dog has really developed a lot of self-control. I've had some clients, there we go, who've had to go all the way up to an hour of waiting. Now what I'm going to do is so he anticipated. I started walking towards it, and he got up. So he anticipated, so he doesn't get the reward for that one. He has to stay sitting down. So I'm going to take another step backwards, and we're going to have to wait. So he just did that because he knew I was just about done explaining all the instructions, and he wanted to see if he can get the treat a little bit faster. Now, if the dog moves around the room, just keep your hips pivoted towards him. You don't always have to be in between the dog and the treat. As you can see, the treat is between me and the dog right now. He is controlling himself, and that's a big part of this exercise, is the dog learning how to develop self-control. Just because I want something doesn't mean I can get it. I have to look for the human to get permission to get it, and make sure that I get the right cue. In this case, just me walking towards the treat, he thought that was the cue. So usually what I do is, it's a little bit different than that. Usually when I walk up to it, the first couple times I kneel down on the floor, I put my butt on my heels with my knees on the ground, so I'm as low to the floor as I can without laying down on it. And then I reach in with the treat on my left or right side, so it's sideways is more approachable for dogs. After the dog starts getting at that point, then what I do is I walk over and I just crouch next to it. I don't kneel, and I tap near it. Once I'm in this process, then sometimes I mess with them a little bit, is I'll kind of pretend like I'm reaching my arms out to my side, almost like I'm stretching. But it looks similar to the dog, like I'm about to tap the floor. And if the dog gets up and tries to take the treat, then I mirror the dog. I get up and I match what the dog just did. There we go. Booty. I say the word booty every time the dog touches it with his lips, slightly after the dog has licked it off its lips. Eventually, when I'm doing this, sitting on the couch watching TV doing this, if the dog, when it lays down and we've got to 5 minutes, if that's the mark, then I just say booty, and the dog knows that means I can go get the treat. Now, when you're doing this, don't ever sit down unless the dog is at minimum sitting down first. When the dog sits, you want to be able to take a step backwards immediately as soon as they sit. So don't sit down until after the dog has sat down. And then yeah, that's pretty much the exercise. Now you can go to doggoneproblems.com. If you click on dog training tips and type in leadership exercise, that's what I call this. This video will come up as well as some videos I've done this with other dogs, so you can kind of watch the technique with other people. We're going to do this off camera with the guardian here himself, but this is how you can teach your dog how to develop self-control and help you practice the escalated consequences while simultaneously shifting the leader-follower dynamic into a healthy relationship.